There's actually empirical evidence that we need law and order to move us forward in a new energy strategy and environmental protection. So it's not just something that people are saying and making up. It's not just because I happen to be a lawyer that I would prefer that there be laws in place. I had the privilege of supervising a friend's law doctoral thesis when she was at U of T. And what she did was, for her thesis, she surveyed all the CEOs of Canadian major corporations. And she asked them, what are the measures that you will actually invest in to try to improve the environment? And she had a long list, you know, voluntary codes and guidelines or actual binding laws. And what she found out is the vast majority, about 98%, said the only time that they will direct that there be an investment in environmental protection is if there's a law in the books. So that is the first ever empirical evidence that we'd seen. And she was a former environmental prosecutor from Ontario before they sliced all those prosecutors away. And so she wanted to show the case for why it is that you still need strong laws and why you need political will to enforce them. Another example was KPMG in, I think it was maybe the late 80s or even the mid 90s. They did a survey again of directors of corporations, and they came to the same conclusion. They listed all the kinds of measures that you can do, you know, to protect the environment. The top was strict law, binding laws that were enforceable with a penalty. And the bottom was voluntary. And every one of the directors said, the only time that I'm going to direct that monies be spent in my corporation is if I legally am obligated to take a measure. So this is just hocus pocus, the lobby by industry to government. And frankly, a whole lot of it just comes from within government itself. They just do not believe that you need those measures, and nor do they understand that the public want them. The third one is there's an association of Northeast states called NESCOM, and it's an amazing affiliation of states in the United States, and they share information and policies and do joint initiatives on pollution control. And they did a study of 5 major pollutants that had been controlled in the United States, and took a look again at what are the measures that actually reduce benzene, reduced NOx, reduced sulfur dioxide. They had 5 of these. And the reason why they were looking at that was because there's a real concern in the United States, the same with Canada, to reduce mercury from coal-fired power plants. And so they did that analysis, very objective, and it came down again. The only reason why they finally moved forward on reducing those pollutants was because either at the federal level or state level, a regulation was issued. So the evidence is there, the empirical evidence is there. We just don't have the political will right now at either the federal or provincial level. Thank heavens, we have more AVPs now, provincially and federally, and we all need to give them support so we can move forward on that. The final one is the Voluntary Challenge Program that was initiated, I don't know, when was that? Probably the mid-1990s. And that was a program that industry put forward where they said, voluntarily, we're going to have this program where we're going to reduce greenhouse gases. We don't need laws, we'll voluntarily do it. And it was a 3-stage program. One, you signed up for the Voluntary Challenge Program. The second stage was you actually submitted an action plan. And the third one was you implemented it. Well, guess what? All the corporations signed up for the Voluntary Challenge Program to show government what great initiative they had. And Pembina Institute a few years ago did an evaluation of what happened in that program. Well, a handful signed up for the second stage and submitted an action plan, and not a single one of them actually took any real measures. So over and over and over again, we have the empirical evidence that without regulation, without law and order for the environment, we're not going to progress in any way. So that's why I say we need rule of law for the environment. We need democracy for the environment. The final thing that I wanted to share with you tonight, now I'll turn over to Dennis, is it's important for us to realize that there already are obligations on the books where our governments are supposed to talk to us about what kind of measures do we need, what kind of an energy strategy do we want for Alberta and for Canada, and there are certain obligations where they actually have to give us notice, let us comment, and then consider our input. I had the privilege a few years ago for working for the North American Commission for Environmental Cooperation. That's one of the side agreements to NAFTA. It's based in Montreal. And what I discovered there, I've been sharing with people ever since. Sierra Legal Defense Fund, who I'm vice president of, have become the most successful in Canada filing petitions to the CEC. And when they first initiated the side agreement on environment to NAFTA, the reason why that was done was because everybody said, well, we have to have the side agreement on environment. Otherwise, Mexico will just, you know, be a free rider, and they won't enforce their environmental laws, and they'll get all the economic advantages in NAFTA. Well, guess which countries had the most petitions filed against it? Canada. And a lot of those have been very successful. Unfortunately, we don't really see the governments responding. But in that agreement as well, there's two equally important provisions that I suggest that you start taking a look at that you can make use of when you get frustrated that you're not being consulted in some kind of impact in your community. The first one is Article 2, where, and by the way, Alberta has signed on to that agreement. They were the first ones to step up to the plate in their usual bravado. Ralph Klein stepped and said, I'll sign that agreement because, you know, we're the best province, blah, 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 blah. So he signed on to it. And what he signed on to was that he committed that he would never downgrade his environmental standards for an economic advantage. Yeah, right. Okay. So the Liberals, you know, also signed on to that, and Harper is equally bound to it. Well, now Harper, as soon as he gets elected, reneges on Kyoto. And why is he doing that? Because he wants an economic advantage for the American oil boys. So there's a provision. We need to have people starting to file petitions to the council. There is a council of the 3 ministers of environment for the 3 countries. And it looks like we're starting to have a little breakthrough in the United States. Unfortunately, we still have the same retrograde administration. But we need to have people starting to file petitions to that council and saying, you hold Canada into account. It's reneging on that agreement. Ontario has now reneged on shutting down its coal-fired plants. It said, we're not going to put mercury control standards in like Alberta, we're going to shut down our plants. What are they saying now? Well, maybe we're not going to shut them down. So there's, again, Ontario reneging. Alberta's policy to expedite oil sands development, you know? Just say to hell with environmental impact, to hell with social impact, to hell with the health of the Fort Chip natives. We're just going to forge ahead and just expedite. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's a violation. They're putting economic development before environmental protection. In fact, they tried to just write off environmental reviews totally. The third provision is a duty to provide advance notice and comment on any new environmental policy and to consider that input. Well, think about that. I mean, you can probably count on both hands and both fingers all of the examples of the Alberta and the federal government reneging on that. There was the secret Alberta energy strategy that some of us found out about, and it was leaked to us. And great embarrassment on behalf of the government, and essentially that policy was, let's expedite energy development and to heck with environmental protection. So they were embarrassed by that, and they put it up for public review. There was a decision to fast-track oil sands development and to heck with environmental development. They said we're going to just declare northern Alberta a sacrifice area. Why did we have a public review? Not because of the government, not because they think that they should consult with people, but simply because they were embarrassed, and thank God for Martha Costick and being stubborn, you know, embarrassed them into doing a review. Now we need Brian Mason to hold them into account of what comes out of it. But they're holding the review. In the meantime, we've got more and more hearings up north and just forging ahead with those developments. Deregulation of electricity. Were any of you consulted on that? No. Absolutely not. Does it have any environmental implications? You bet it does.